Good morning, guys. Good afternoon. Today is March 18th. So, in keeping with the reading plan, it just has us reading chapter 1 of 1 Samuel. But I see tomorrow that we're going to pick up with chapter 3. So, I went ahead and I did 1 and 2. And it's just amazing word for me for today. I'm just going to make a quick statement. Like the reason I started this, it wasn't about teaching, but it was about holding myself accountable and just being faithful to myself and getting in the word. And I wanted to do it with a group of people. And being that I didn't have a group of people to do it with, and time was just passing, I went ahead and I just started this channel. So my prayer is that at some point, like if it's like 5 years from now, I'll start seeing comments like where people were just like so into the word and like they got different things that they're looking to share. So I'm always gonna say like if people are reading and going through the actual plan and if they're finding stuff that speaks to them, like, please share it because I believe always I'm gonna say that the word is living and it speaks to our spirit. And a lot of times it speaks to whatever circumstance we find ourselves in. So that's just to say I was so blessed this morning by actually sitting down and taking the time to read chapter 1 and 2 of Samuel because it's almost like this is a shift again. So in First Samuel, the first chapter, it's like we meet a man named Elkanah who has two wives, and one is barren. And so not having kids affects, how you're treated. So it shows that, even though her husband loved her so much, but he still followed the principle of like when they went up to get to do the sacrifice, like what would come back and what would be hers. So her portion will always be less than his other wives because his other wife had children. And so this was something that she used to like mock Hannah, and it made Hannah feel really bad. And it was like to the point where it was really bad because it was one of those things that her husband had said that he really loved her. But the fact that she couldn't have kids was something that grieved her so much that it was like it wasn't a hole that her husband's love could fill. So I think that that kind of worked out on both people. Like sometimes you can decide something that you feel like you have to have and that you can actually, grieve somebody's heart that cares about you to that level that they want to see you happy and they want to be the one to give you those things. But moving on. So we see that as they go to the temple one morning, she finds herself in there and she's just so grieved and she's crying out to God because this is really something that, she desired. So it sees like the priest Eli comes in and he sees her and he thinks she's drunk. Like, what in the world? Like, it's too early in the day. And then she explains herself. And so he was like, after that explanation, he was like, may the Lord bless you. And so I guess it's kind of showing different things because it's like when something is grieving your heart that much, and it's like you take it to the Lord because now when she returned home with her husband, and they were intimate, it was like the God remembered her crying out and he blessed her with a child. So I don't know. One of the biggest things I'm in right now is just relational, like how your relationships matter. God, your relationship with God tops everything. But then how it flows through everywhere else, that where it could just be a blessing to you, but ultimately to other people because that was one of the things that she promised God was that if you give me this child, I'll give him back to you. So now it seems like, when her and her husband were intimate, God remembered her and God gave her a child. And so now next year it's time for her to travel, for them to travel back to the priest. And she was like, well, no, I'm going to stay back because I promised my son to, like, leave at the temple, but I want to wait until he's weaned. And so I actually went to my L Google. I'm gonna get better with my Bible references, but it just said like a weaning period was a period of like 2 to 3 years, like in biblical times. So it was like once he was properly weaned, she did take him. She did keep her promise. to God. And I'm just thinking of myself, like, as a woman, as a mom, to want something so bad and then to have it and to now realize that you promised it for something else, and to actually like come to a place where you're comfortable to keep your promise. And one of the things that I kind of liked about it was that after she left him there, it said that she would return to the temple like each year as he grew with a new coat for him. So even though she didn't have her son there physically to love, she still found a way to be a mom, to love him. And one of the things that it showed was that as they went back, back and forth, that eventually God did bless her with more children. So, she gave up the one, but she still respected what she had said to God. And then she still even showed love instead of contempt. Like, so much contempt and discouragement was gone from her heart, and she was able to keep her word to God, but still show love to what she did. And that opens up the window for God to bless her even more, because I believe that it shows that they ended up with like five more kids in total. And I just thought that that was so amazing. But it was like she had a song to God, like after, she was able to conceive. And one of the things that I kind of wrote from it, because the song was like, it was praising who God was, but it was also saying that God had took her from this place of being mocked and being tormented in so many ways to now being a person of favor. And she was like, and it was just what's going in with that. But it was pretty much her praising God for the way that he vindicated her and ultimately gave her the victory. And she put in it that no one will succeed in their strength alone. So I love that. For chapter one, I'm gonna do it a little bit different because we do get a um a devotional. And I always feel like that's the gem for this Bible that was, put together for women. And so the Bible verse today is from, it's called Dedicate Your Blessings, right? And I'm starting something different where when I'm reading it on this channel, it's the first time I'm reading it for myself. So just allow me to go through all my oohs and ahs as God is blessing my spirit personally. And so this is 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 11. And it said, and she made this vow, O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime. And as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut. This is the love letter from God. It says, Beloved daughter, you are precious to me. I long to give you the desires of your heart, but I don't want any of the blessings I give you to draw your heart away from me. All gifts that I give to you come with a beautiful purpose. I have given you a life to live with me, a world to enjoy, and a desire in your heart to do something great. But I do not want these things to replace me. Give me the glory in all you do. When you ask for something and dedicate it to me, I will intervene for you in ways more wonderful than you could ever dream. Love your Heavenly Father. Reflection. It's amazing what can happen in our faith walks when we cry out to God for the desires of our heart, then make the decision to use what He gives us for His glory. Don't be afraid to ask God for what you want, but make sure that it will ultimately draw you and others closer to Him when you receive it. Treasure of truth. God loves giving us what we will give back to Him. I'm gonna take a deep breath because that's speaking to me in so many ways. And that's one of the things where, like, God was actually showing me when I read it. So now that I'm looking at the devotional, it's just like a confirmation of what God is saying to me right now, my spirit. And I hope that, it blesses you as well. I don't know if you have a Bible going through some of the stuff and not able to have that devotional. but maybe you could even write your own, like, something that you feel like God is speaking, and it could be part of your journal, like something that you could go back to at another time and it can bless you, right? So it was one of those things as we went into chapter 2, it's almost like you see later on that now God is starting to deal with the priest at the time who was Eli. And it was one of those things where his sons was actually doing wicked in God's eyes. And it was really offensive because what his sons was actually doing was when people were bringing to present sacrifices to the altar, which was like what the Levites had actually been there for. It was like his sons was actually sending people out to take the best and bring it back to them. And it's one of those things where this was a great offense to God, and stuff had gotten back to Eli. So Eli had become aware. And so he went and he warned his sons, but in his sons' minds, they were already going to be killed by God anyway. So they did not care. So it's like you're in this position as a priest and you're taking advantage of the stuff that's meant for God. Like that was literally something where it was seen that they were putting themselves before God. And this was actually shown because it showed that there was a another man of God that actually came and warned Eli because what they were doing, it says that and I think the way Eli had explained it to his sons was that it's one thing if you do something to another person, then it's almost like God could mediate. But then it's like if you're doing this stuff to God, like who can actually intercede on your behalf? And so it was like Eli understood the seriousness of what was going on with his sons, right? And so when the God man of God actually came to Eli, he's looking at Eli like he asked the question, why do you give your sons more honor than you give me? It's like for you and your sons have become fat from the best offerings of my people of Israel. So it was one of those things that, like, when it came to sacrifice and the way that people showed their reverence to who God was, it was very specific in the things that they would do. And the fact that people who had been put in charge of receiving that blessing to make sure that God was honored the way he expected to be honored and that you actually put him beneath your wants and your desires was unacceptable. And it was shown that God had even said that because of this actions that you guys will be removed from the house of God. And not only that, but that lineage to an extent would be cut off from their priestly duties. And he told Eli like nobody in your generation will live long. Like their lives will actually be cut short because this is a great offense. And it's one of those things, in the past we read where people were idols, but it's almost like if God don't like for you to put other idols above him, for you to put yourself above him is just such a disrespect that it's almost like I'm gonna have to show up as the God who I am and show you that this is not okay. And so it was just a different way to end things. But it was one of those things where it was like now because they hadn't acted and done right to God based on the position that He placed them in. Like they weren't receiving things that they actually went out there and worked for. But it was like the way God had things set up was that because they were put in these roles and in these titles, that they were worthy to be taken care of. But it was after God had been properly revered and respected. And when they crossed that, it just caused them to now cut not only themselves, but further generations off from what God had for them. So that was it for chapters 1 and 2. And it was one of those things where we got to see how you can pray, you can ask, you can plead, but then it's like allow that blessing to be that God gives you to be something that blesses not only you, but others. And then the other way is to actually take to heart the things of God and never put yourself above Him or take anything that belongs to him in any kind of way, because it won't be well for you or the generations to come. So this book is starting out real good. So I hope y'all are digging in and being intentional and getting that time in with God and letting the word just work out whatever it needs to work out for you, because that's where I'm at today. So I pray you guys are blessed. Have a good one.